I'm your host, Sheldon Alexander, and it's feeling pretty good on this Monday morning as we are still on a wave on the pod. Our Thursday pod, we went 5-3 against the spread. Adding it all up, that's 19-11 against the spread in the play-in and playoffs combined. 31-15-1 against the spread in our NBA picks given out on this pod. We'll do that again every time there's a pod. During the playoffs, we're going to go through each and every series and give you a pick for that next game. We're on a wave right now, just trying to keep the wave going. Of course, we're going to start there as the Celtics and Nets series continues. Boston leads 3-0. Game 3 in Brooklyn. The Nets were favored by 3.5 points. And on this pod, we sat here and I said the Nets were cooked. It's just a horrible matchup for them. KD struggled. Kyrie's MIA. Ben Simmons is still doing fashion shows on the sidelines. And the Celtics win in Brooklyn 109-103 to take a convincing 3-0 lead. And if you just listen to the quotes from Kyrie, even after game 2, much less now after game 3, it just sounds like it's 1-2-3 Cancun mode. I don't know where you stand in this, but heading into game 4, it's Nets favored by 1. And I got to be on the Celtics here because, I mean, the Nets have done absolutely nothing to show any will, any want, any sense of adjustments. Like, they're done. They're planning trips to Cabo right now.
Yeah, right. And the sort of quote unquote sensible or whatever version of myself would be like, hey, like it's a pick 'em game basically, right? And it's pick 'em for a reason. It's 50-50 probability on either side. We saw this line open 2.5 for the Nets. I don't know if that was the assumption that Ben Simmons was going to come back. I don't know if that was just, to try to stick with the, the ratings for each of these teams that created a 3.5 to 3-point spread for game 3. But it's funny, right? Like a week ago, we were preparing the documents to sign up for 7 games of this, right? And it was like Jason Tatum's spinning layup just stole the soul from the Nets, which is really like a sad and sort of somewhat mentally weak accusation, if you will. But then you watch them play in game 3, a game, like look around the rest of the NBA, right? You got the Nuggets coming out to play down 0-3. You have the Raptors coming out to play down 0-3. You have a bunch of these teams down 0-2, getting things done at home in game 3, and the Nets just don't. And it's not obviously for lack of talent. The matchup was going to be relatively bad. We've talked about that for the last week. So, you were on it as far as just being like, this team stinks, and they don't have the heart for it. And I'm like, and I was looking, I'm like, well, they're gotta get one here, right? And as long as Ben Simmons doesn't come back, I will be betting the Nets. And I did, and it was actually one of the few losses that I had from this past week. But it was one that I was like, yeah, okay. Like that was as bad as it's going to get as far as like making a pick and just being incorrect, because again, we were very close to having the Nets win both of those two, games individually, right? Now, who knows if they win the first game, are they even, do they even care about the second game, right? Does the game play out the same way? I'm of the opinion that it doesn't, right? These games aren't played in a vacuum. So, the point is like, there's a lot of different ways the series could have been 1-1 traveling back to Brooklyn. Now, would that have meant anything? Would that have meant anything for game 3 as far as the Nets just being a far worse team at this point than the Celtics? Probably not, right? If you can't get it up for 0-2, why would you get up for this game, right? And so I'm looking at that. That was going to be my question for you, right? How is this not a 1-2-3 Cancun situation? So, yeah, I think the only bet right now, we don't have any series plays or anything like that still alive going in this game. I think the only bet right now is just take the Celtics here to execute the Nets here live on the court in Brooklyn here on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is, right, it's not even that Brooklyn sucks. Like, I know they have Kevin Durant, they have Kyrie Irving. It couldn't have been a worse matchup, right? Like the Celtics have the best like 6'9" guys in terms of Jaylen Brown and Tatum to guard KD. And then the rest of their team are either super small guards and then either Claxton or Andre Drummond. Right. And that's just a bad matchup. Like, you need a Dragic, Seth Curry. Like, you're asking Dragic, Seth Curry to guard like Jaylen Brown. Like, that's not going to work, right? And you're trying to bring up Blake Griffin, right? Like, they brought in Blake Griffin to give him a spin. That's just a desperation. It's just not a good look.
Like, as best as it could, right? For them.
For sure.
You look at this team, like, look around the rest of the NBA, and it's just like, we talk about the Raptors having this armada of like athletic wings, right? Where it's just 6'9" guy after 6'9" guy, and they lose like 2 of them, 3 of them, and like there's still a few more guys left on the bench there. Where are those guys for the Nets? Like, look around the league. There are are guys like that all over the league. It's like there's an assembly line coming into the NBA now, and like somehow the Nets just went without. Right.
Yeah.
It's Andre Drummond. It's Blake Griffin. Like you mentioned, like it's like either just sort of guard play or kind of washed up 4 or 5 type guys. Right. And you just go like, where are the athletic wings? Right. And the Celtics have those guys and they just swarm Kevin Durant. And like, yeah, okay, the Nets might not stink, but like, have we considered the possibility that they do? Like maybe they do. Right. And like Kevin Durant's on the team.
Really good. And I didn't think so before. But yeah, I honestly think they're like really, really good.
Well, listen,
I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, like listen, I was on the Nets in game 3. We talked about, this being a really interesting, pick'em series, what the market was going to do, but you can rewind it. We can go back to February, March, when we started talking about the NBA, right? I was throwing my body in front of Nets bets just from a market standpoint. And when we would go through the Eastern Conference, I was like, well, what about the Celtics here, who at that point had started their run there where they won like 10 games in a row. So, I definitely, listen, I'm on the Celtics from back then, and certainly not, wasn't against playing them in this series. But yeah, like they have the team, especially now that Robert Williams is coming back, right? Like, and they have this team that can compete. It'll be interesting in this next series. Obviously, things have taken a turn in Milwaukee and Chicago. It'll look like, we're getting that Milwaukee matchup. Be interesting to see where that line opens here, probably between now and Thursday.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's like, I wonder, watching that Celtics series, I do think that it would be a closer series, Nets versus Bucks. And not for any reason that like, I think it's some indictment on the Bucks versus the Celtics, because that's its own series, but it's just how the teams match up, right? Like Pat Connaughton out there being guarded by Seth Curry is a little bit different, right? So anyways, basketball, game of matchups.